Let's call the November meeting of the Environmental Resources Committee to order. Item 2, public comment. Did we have anybody to sign up for public comment? No. All right, moving on. 3, approval of the October 5th, 2021 committee minutes. I would entertain a motion to approve. Motion by Supervisor Drayback. Second by Supervisor Seefeld. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Number 4, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolution. Public hearings, review possible actions, possible recommendation of the county board for its consideration. We have none. Review and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration. Town zoning changes pursuant to WSStat 60.62 sub 3. We have none. Review and possible recommendations to the county board for its consideration. C1, update to chapter 19, section 19.07, animals of the Marathon County Code of Ordinances.
This is Paul Daigle. I'll take that. It should just correct that. This is the animal waste management ordinance. And
Nope, that's something with the park facilities and animals.
I'm sorry. There's 2 topics on here. I thought maybe they got repeated. We'll let that go. Sorry.
No, this is me. Thank you. This is coming from the Parks Department. This is our county chapter 19 with the Marathon County Code of Ordinances, where it has to do with parks in public facilities. This is something that was brought forward to us. We've had the sports complex. Oh, thank you. The sports complex was built about 6 years ago, and when it was built, it has a separate set of rules to it, and one of the rules was to not allow dogs or animals on the sports complex because of the high quality fields that are out there, the wear and tear that it already has. So the sports complex is actually not open to the public for general use. It's got gates and it's open for scheduled use. One of the items that we've had occur even prior to me coming 3.5 years ago, and then again this summer, is that the local law enforcement will show up out there unscheduled, and they will train their canines on the sports complex. And they show up just before we have a lot of people coming for activities. Like I said, it's not scheduled. And then we have people that question, dogs aren't allowed up here. Why are the canines allowed and stuff like that? So that's what kind of stemmed this. And then looking at our ordinance, it did say that in the last paragraph or the last sentence, it says, in any of these areas within county parks, except assistance dogs or animals being used or trained to assist emergency service workers or as authorized by the commission. I think where our intent was, and when I took this to the park commission, and their intent with the sports complex along with these other facilities, is that we will always allow dogs and animals that are being used for assistance, so service dogs, and we will allow dogs or animals that are being used to assist emergency service workers. So if they're doing a tracking of something or somebody, definitely they would be allowed within the facility. But we do not, these facilities, specifically the public buildings, the bathing beach, the sports complex, the Marathon Park Amphitheater, and playgrounds, wouldn't be something where we want dogs being trained out on, because this isn't specific just to law enforcement. It's anybody could really go and train their animal out in these facilities because the word trained is in there. So confirming this with the park commission, this was not their intent. Now, if somebody, it does say, or as authorized by the commission, they're recommending that language be changed to add or their designee, which would be myself or someone within my department, to allow this. If I had anybody call and have a legitimate reason for wanting to train an animal in any of these areas, whether it's for service or emergency purposes, and they're scheduling it so we can make sure that there's no conflicts with the users, we allow that, and we have allowed that. So this is just to clean up some of the confusion, to take out the word trained and add or designee, and then that would still allow this activity to happen as long as it's scheduled and approved through us to make sure there's no conflicts and doesn't just allow people to show up and train in these facilities where there's a legitimate reason why we don't want animals there. So that's what's being brought forward.
Okay, any questions? Marilyn?
So the canines can still be trained there with their officers, but they would still have to let you know ahead of time?
Well, they have to let me know that they want to use it, and then we would be able to say if we allow it or not. It would all depend on what the conflicts are, or what's happening out there. So if they wanted to use it, once a year for a specific training that couldn't be done somewhere else, then yes, we would say yes. But I mean, we have a lot of other park facilities in the county that have the same amenities of why they say they want to go there, that they could be using and not be on our high quality athletic turf fields. So,
Thank you.
Other questions? I did have one. So has this been brought to, and I don't know which department uses these facilities for the dog training, but have you brought it in front of the law enforcement departments to make sure it's okay with them, or?
well, it got brought to my attention by the city of Wausau canine officer challenging our ordinance and wanting to have trainings out there, and he brings in all the canine officers from around the region, and they just show up. So this is in response to that challenge to that ordinance of why he feels he can do it now and should be able to do it without telling us. And the commission feels different, so this went to the park commission to verify what their intent was specifically with that facility, but when we look at any of our facilities.
So how do I say this? And I might ask you to repeat yourself. I apologize if I do. If a law enforcement agency did want to use the facilities, and I'm not suggesting that they do, is there a process with this that they could do so?
Yes, they can contact our office and ask for permission to use it, basically, and we could determine, yes, if they want to use it. If there's nobody else out there and we have nobody coming in from, with athletics or anything like that, most likely we would allow it. It probably wouldn't allow a regular training at the sports complex specific because of the high quality fields that are out there, but if it's a one-time training specific to that location that has a need out there that we don't have anywhere else, then we would approve it. But we do have, this would also allow them to go, if they wanted to do a specific beach training, they would still call us, get that permission, and as long as there's no conflicts, we would grant that permission.
Okay, thank you. Marilyn, did you have a follow-up?
Another thing is, if they needed to go out there, they wouldn't have to notify you. If they had to go out there for a specific purpose, for search and rescue or criminal activity or something like that, they're allowed to be there without asking permission or letting you know?
Yes, correct. So we are going to keep in the ordinance that they are allowed assistance dogs or dogs being used to assist emergency service workers. So we would consider that as assistance, yep.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, a motion to approve be in order, I believe. Motion by Supervisor Seefeld to approve the ordinance changes. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Drabeck. Thank you. Motion by Supervisor Seefeld, second by Supervisor Drabeck to approve the ordinance amendments. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's see here. Item 4D, review and possible action 1, proposed 2022 meeting schedule. So we are getting into the fall, I believe, and I'm sure the staff here are wondering what the meeting schedule is going to look like for this upcoming year. And looks like these are the proposed dates. I'm guessing this is going to be roughly consistent with the first Tuesday of the month.
They're going to meet the rules ordinance and leave them together, but be consistent with what's in there, so it's pretty prescriptive.
Okay. Trying to think of anything, and obviously there will be a couple of timing ones, like the August meeting, and there's is there one or two of them? May is the other one that every once in a while there's one that they have to have two in the same month, but yeah. Is there 3? Where's the 3rd one? I'm looking at May and August. Oh, November, the last one.
Yeah, so it's gotta be so many days before the county board meeting, so that's why sometimes it flips into the end of the month.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I don't know if there's any input on this. We're required by the rules to have them at this time, but I guess start putting these in your calendars. Of course, if you're running again, and we'll start going next year. All right, moving on. Item 5, educational presentations, outcome monitoring, reports to committee discussion. A, department updates, conservation planning and zoning, parks, recreation, and forestry, solid waste. 5A1, update on Fenwood Creek, funding request, buffer and gully inventory, and water quality monitoring.
So, just to continue to bring you up to date, we submitted it with great help from, sorry, forgot that. This is being recorded. So we submitted a shoreland surface water grant at, I believe it was Monday, the final copy went in. And it's really gonna, hopefully if we're successful, fund that water resources technician position to extend that funding. And a lot of that work's gonna be in the Fenwood to work on those buffer areas. And we've had a couple of really good meetings with Natural Resources Conservation Service to make sure we're, partnering on this and not doubling efforts up or duplicating things, and trying to get Conservation Reserve, those 35 feet next to the stream, into that program and create those permanent buffers. And so that grant will hopefully continue that work. And also, Jared has begun an inventory of buffers and gullies in the Fenwood, and that'll extend beyond that into the impaired watersheds as the next priority once we get that done. And we're working on with the university on, that's one of the projects too, and Jared's the champion on that. In addition, that surface water grant we applied for also has additional funds for water quality monitoring at the Fenwood, where that dumps into the Eau Plaine River, really at the headwaters of the Eau Plaine Reservoir. And we also have a little bit of money left over from our staffing grant when we did the Fenwood plan, and we're using that staffing money to go out and take samples on a bi-weekly basis. The DNR really wants to get more sampling so we can make definitive statements on where the water quality is moving. So that has started, and those samples are being processed at UW-Stevens Point on every other week. Any questions with that?
Paul, I guess my question would be, those water quality samples, are those going to be the samples that we're going to be needing to establish where we're currently at, especially, we're going to be talking about the strategic plan later. Is that the data that we're looking for?
That is the rock solid data. We can model this all we want, but the in-stream water quality monitoring is really what we want to show folks that we are moving the needle. And we need enough data points to say it with confidence, because if we just do it quarterly or monthly, it's not enough points to be confident in those results. So that's exactly right. Ties back into our strategic plan to reduce the phosphorus in the Fenwood by 20% by the end of 2022. So hopefully we'll have enough data points to be able to make a statement on that at that point.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Draybeck.
Thank you. I was just going to ask the question, like add a 5-foot tillage setback, or just if you could explain some of these just a little bit. What's the process here? Or like process wastewater, what do you mean
I think,
exactly by that?
I think we're jumping to
am I in the wrong one here?
You're one item too far, but yeah, we can discuss those when we get to those.
Okay, I was just thumbing through, and that was the next one after
you're right. It is the next one, so you took a logical jump to that.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry about that.
Okay, any other questions for, I guess, 5A1, A through C for staff? All right, hearing none, moving on. Now we have 5A2 Wisconsin Fund for Pouts.
Just a second there, Chair Langenham, this is Andy at CPZ. We have a call-in user, if they could identify themselves. Last two digits, 81.
Eric Vogel chimed in finally.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, Eric. Thank you. And thank you, Andy. All right, Wisconsin Fund.
Yeah, I just wanted to provide the committee a quick update. The Wisconsin Fund Grant, that is the program for rehabilitation or replacement of failing private on-site wastewater treatment systems. We are waiting to hear if the State Joint Finance Committee was going to approve expenditure authority for funding through 2023, and they did go ahead and approve that last week. So now we're just waiting for some clarity from the Department of Safety and Professional Services in terms of how homeowners can apply or what the dates will be to apply for that grant funding. And once we have that, we'll continue to do what we have been doing through our POUTS program, which is providing education to homeowners that meet the criteria of the Wisconsin Fund Grant Program and try and get them to apply for those grant funds within the timeline so that they could potentially get that funding for their failing systems. So we'll put handouts and educational material together once we get a little bit more clarity from the Department of Safety and Professional Services on those deadlines. It was about 1.68 million through with the program sunsetting in 2023 now on that Wisconsin Fund Grant.
Marilyn.
Is there a dollar amount that they can get the grant for, or is it just so much? Is there a max on what they can get on the Wisconsin Fund?
So that's a 30-year debate. So the state law says 60%, but then if there's not enough money to fund all the requests, then they prorate those. So sometimes they've dropped as low as 30%.
Do they recommend, do the people still have a choice whether it's a holding tank or a mound system when they do that, or is that their choice?
Our ordinance does ask the residents to install. The holding tank is the system of last resort. There's some exemptions for hunting and fishing shelters, certain uses that might not have a heavy flow, but if there's any way they can get any type of system, they're asked to put that in first in most cases.
All right, and I ask this question every time we talk about anything remotely related to POUTS, but a couple of years ago when the ERC made the decision to make the EIF fund revolving loan program, like I said, I know I ask this question every single time, but have we actually had anybody use that fund?
I know we have at least 2 applicants working with McDevco. They have not been approved yet. They're working with them though. So.
Have they actually submitted applications?
Yes, I believe they're working with them through the process. I don't know if the documents are complete. McDevco just had a turnover in their person in charge of the program, so I'm still connecting with the new person to figure out where those applicants are at.
Okay, thank you. Marilyn.
What does McDevco charge per application?
We believe it, yeah. We believe it's $4 or $4.50, but I'd have to verify that.
I think that's too high. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay, any other questions?
This is Supervisor Guild.
Go ahead, Supervisor Guild.
So speaking of the POUTS fund that we have through the county, and knowing that the one at we had established it under the assumption that the one at the state was going away, and it keeps getting extended, which is great. But my impression is that we have money now here at the county that's just kind of sitting there because no one's utilizing it. And I think that we need to take a look at that funding and decide if we need to continue to have that resource, because my understanding is we haven't had anyone approved at all yet. I don't know the reasons behind that. I don't know if it's too complicated. I don't know if they just don't need it. But I think I would like for us to take a look at this and see what's what's going on, why hasn't it been used, and do we need to adjust this fund? Because that's a lot of money to not be putting towards the county if there's other options available. So I'd like to ask that we get some kind of a report. It doesn't have to be, next month. I know we've got holidays and everything coming up here, but maybe in early 2022. That'll give McDevco's new director a chance to kind of settle in, but I would like us to take a look at it before we have the turnover at the end of this session.
Marilyn, do you have a follow-up?
I agree with Sarah, and I would say that how that money is going to be used, I think I'd still like for it to come through the ERC committee.
So, good, excellent points, and one of the reasons why I had to bring this up. And no matter what, the funds themselves are associated with the EIF yet, right? So we made a decision as a committee, I want to say that was 5 years ago, Paul? It's been a while ago. We made a decision that one of the projects that applied for this fund was this future revolving loan fund, and ERC made that decision to put it towards that particular project. And I think now we're at a point where we can start to evaluate that project and see whether or not it arrived at its conclusion that we thought it was going to arrive at. I know it gets very dicey, especially considering that the Wisconsin fund is this, are they going to fund it, not going to fund a decision that happens every biennium when there's a new state budget. So I agree with Supervisor Guild. I agree with Marilyn here that it might not hurt to at least have a discussion about whether or not the money is being leveraged in the best way possible. Either way, it's going to have an environmental impact because of that, the intended use behind these funds. But is there a better way that it can have an impact? So, any other questions under Wisconsin Fund? Okay, thank you. Item 5A3, Animal Waste and Nutrient Management Ordinance Revisions, set public hearing date. Now, Paul.
So in your packet, I think I was August or September, I just brought this up that I'd be bringing this back to the committee later this fall. And so I'm really looking at some possible changes to the animal waste management ordinance. And I tried to scope these out a little bit. And to me, I personally consider them minor, but we need to find out from our farm community and other users and citizens if they do as well. But the DNR really, our last grant, we could have got more points if we would have been more detailed in our ordinance. All of these areas, except for, I believe the 5-foot tillage setback is included under either nutrient management or like the barnyard runoff model that's prescriptive in there that pounds of phosphorus have to be at certain levels. But they're really asking us if we want to compete for some of these state grants to basically include the state language for the state performance standards and prohibitions. And so it's going to make our ordinance a little bit longer. But it's, like I said, all these things are under, if you file a nutrient management plan, you have to have your phosphorus levels at certain rates, your soil loss at certain rates. So those are, to me, included in there. You have to have your gullies under control under nutrient management plan. We already have something for barnyards in there with how many pounds of phosphorus, but they want us to spell that out. The tillage setback, if you remember back 2.5 years ago, I did not include that because I can't find a stream in Marathon County that someone can get a plow within 5 feet of and plow. So that including that in our ordinance was just extra language in my opinion. The state doesn't think so. So they really, that is a state performance standards. It's not going to impact our farmers from our streams are either too rocky or too wet when you get that close. Or too steep. So that's going to be added. So So that, I mean, actually, I had an email today. I'm going to be meeting with our Farm Bureau, and I'll ask for a meeting with Farmers Union to see if they want to talk about them and see how robust our engagement looks like. But regardless, I think I can have that done by January and ask for a public hearing. If there's a lot of comments and they need more feedback, we could reopen it in February if we would need to. But that's really what is in there. It's to detail out some of those state performance standards and prohibitions. So if with the committee's permission, I would like to bring that to our January ERC meeting. I believe that's January 4th, if I have the date right.
Thank you, Paul. Is there, I guess, any, well, I'll just say this. My only concern would be, is 3 o'clock the best time? Do we want to hold it in maybe the evening if there is going to be public engagement there?
That's the committee's call, if they want to hold the evening session or, with WebEx and phones, folks can join pretty easy for a meeting these days if they want to take off the end of the day. The other option you could do is just say, we will hold it at 4:30 and you get all your other business done and maybe you'd wait, or if you're not quite through it, you'd have to stop your meeting and open that public hearing up right at 4:30 or something like that. If those are just options for you to consider, but I'm fine if you want to go to 7 p.m. or something.
I was just, thank you. I was just throwing it out there for the good of the group. Unless you want to keep it at 3 o'clock, I'm open to anything. My main thing is obviously accessibility and making sure that if we did have somebody that wanted to speak, that they'd be able to. But now that I'm thinking about it and sort of talking out loud, I think when we've had situations like this in the past, and there have been these scheduling conflicts, we've often encouraged the individuals to submit their comments in writing. So, is there any, I guess I should say, are we good with 3 o'clock as the time?
Jake, I think no matter what time you take, there's going to be some people who say it's not the right time.
Okay. So the time is fine. Oh, Supervisor Gill, did you have something?
I just wanted to, I guess, kind of affirm that I think 3 o'clock makes the most sense since it's consistent and, that's kind of what people are accustomed to. Marilyn's right, there's never going to be the ideal time, but I do think we want to make sure that we're very clear about the fact that we are accepting written comments up until, 3 p.m. on that date or whatever it is. And that we've got, we've had a lot of conversations about the outreach process and making sure that the appropriate and people and organizations are aware. So just to make sure the information is out there, that they can get us those written comments up until 3 p.m. I think is just that will really kind of make it accessible for all.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. Then let's set the public hearing for January 4th at 3 o'clock, and we'll make it part of our regular order of business for that meeting. Okay. Paul, do you need anything else? Okay. Thank you very much. Moving on, item 5A4, Environmental Repair Fund update. So the reason I placed this on the agenda is a member of the committee had contacted me and wanted some more information on Environmental Repair Fund, or the ERF. And the long and short of it, and maybe others who have more experience with this can clarify to me, but there are funds out there that are available to the county to use for specific items, but the applicability or the allowable uses for these funds or the ability for the county to actually access these funds is very narrow, and the only way that the county would be able to is through legislative change. There was a memo included in your packet, which I believe was provided to the committee before. I don't know, this
meeting is being recorded.
In case you didn't know. So there were two reasons why I wanted to include this. The first one, obviously, is because there was a request from the committee to bring it on here. The second one being that if there is any sort of legislative change that would need to take place in order for us to have additional resources as a committee to, obviously accomplish the strategic plan objectives, we would like to be aware of them. And it looks like our county board chair had been in conversation with some state legislators at one point. So I think in the future, my main goal for this is to have a discussion on the ERF and to have a discussion with the county administrator and the county board chair, at the very least, the county board chair, to see where we are at with the legislative change. So are there any questions or comment from the committee? Okay. Well, then pay attention to this. It'll probably be on the agenda for the coming month. I'm probably going to ask the county board chair to be here to have some discussions with us. All right. Moving on to 6, policy issues, discussion, committee determination to the county board for its consideration. We have none. Next meeting date, November 30th, 2021, assembly room and future agenda items. And then committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion, A. So we are down to 7B, announcements, requests, correspondence, strategic plan implementation update.
I think this was just that we wanted to get that on the November 30th agenda in terms of you wanted us from
Yep.
Craig's request. From Craig's request at the last meeting that you and I had discussed, just giving an update at the November 30th meeting on where we are with the items in the strategic plan.
Okay, thank you. Now, Paul, will we have any of that hard data back by then?
I don't think so.
Okay,
Maybe in January.
Okay.
I'm hopeful that's January, but.
so maybe we'll just take December off. November 30th, we'll have what we have already discussed that. Take December off. January, we'll have some of that stuff back. Maybe. Of course. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Any other questions for that item? All right. Not. We have item 8. I'd entertain a motion. Motion by Supervisor Seefeld. Second by Supervisor Draybeck. Any discussion? It's not debatable. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.